Hello and good morning to everyone. I hope wherever you're at, the sun is shining or it's warm or both. I really can't say either in the Chicagoland area, but we are going to have 65 degrees tomorrow, and I'm pretty excited about that. Open the windows up, enjoy it a little bit, and then it'll get cold again. I'm Cheryl Larson, and I lead the Midwest Business Group on Health, and we're happy to have you on today's important call. We work on a lot of employer-directed projects at MBGH, and this one has been not only fascinating but hearing what employers have struggled with and how they're addressing some of those issues has been just a wonderful opportunity for us to share that with other employers. As you know, we like to start with talking about our upcoming events. I only have a few slides today on where we're headed with educational programs. In just 2 weeks, we have a wonderful, wonderful program on mental health and chronic conditions. And just to give you a little background on that program, we're going to focus on what employers can do to define, align, integrate, and measure comprehensive mental health strategies. We have 2 leading employers who are going to be giving presentations. You could call them keynotes, but we're excited to have them sharing their stories, and that includes Microsoft and also Boeing. Those are 2 presentations you do not want to miss. They're going to talk about providing the spectrum of support needed for frontline employees. We also have a few other phenomenal speakers who have both authored books. One is hosting a podcast, and they're going to share their perspectives on this marketplace as well as the role that employers play. And although most of you know we do our programs in person and virtual, we would love to see you in person, because really that's where the magic at MBGH happens. That's where you can get in a room with your peers and talk about the same challenges you're having and how you're working around them and learn from each other. In fact, I think we have 2 table talks planned for that event in a few weeks. And you can still register at mbgh.org, and don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. Our June 24th Employer Forum, we originally cited this to focus on cell and gene therapies, but there's so much going on in the pharmacy benefit space and specialty drugs that we are realigning that, and I'm working on the agenda now. It is going to be a must-attend event and fabulous. And of course, look at September 30th, the transparency effect, data access, fiduciary duty, and lost dollars. We've had a lot of people approach us about one of these topics. Then when they saw we were doing all 3, they were very excited. So make sure that these are on your calendar. Could I have the next slide, please? And of course, let's see, is it going to be 2 months? 2.5 months is our big 46th annual conference. We love the title, Employer Blueprint for Action, Unite, Demand, Disrupt, Repeat. We love to share who our keynotes are. So our opening keynote is Chris Deacon. She recently wrote a very disruptive book on healthcare and how it's impacting employers and what we can do about it. And she'll share that at the conference. And we're each going to get a copy of her book. If you've never heard Cora Upsall talk, Cora is an amazing speaker and very direct. She's our employer keynote on the first day. Second day opening keynote is Ford Coles. Many of you have seen him before. We're excited to have him back. And our own Rosemary Sams from Univar Solutions is going to be heading up the second day on her practical steps that she has been focused on as a mid-size employer. And as always, we've got our pre-conference for employers only. So look at this, a workshop on high-cost claims with Dr. Christine Hale, who's going to be walking us through what we can do about them and how to look at our data. And then we have some wonderful social events planned after. Next slide. By the way, every employer member of MBGH gets 1 full complimentary pass to the conference with discounts for additional people from the same company. So make sure you register soon. We will sell out again. And then I just wanted to share, if you're looking at actively evaluating alternative or transparent PBMs, we are about to make some big decisions as part of our purchasing arm, Midwest Health Purchasers Collaborative. We asked you what you wanted, and employer members said we want transparent PBMs, and that's all everybody is talking about, but there's a lot out there. So we are doing the due diligence and vetting the top 6 or 7 We already are thinking about the ones that we're going to be selecting, and by April, we should have those 2 vendors in place along with a pharmacy consulting strategist organization that's focused on the mid-market. So if you're looking for strategies that emphasize transparency, performance, and affordability, because we offer discounts, best-in-class pricing, please contact me or Mark Flager. You can see Mark's email at the bottom, and you can reach him in other ways. This is a big deal for MBGH. I said I would never want to contract with PBMs, any PBMs, because I wasn't happy with what they were doing. And the marketplace has shifted, and we know that PBM legislation is going to be moving forward. So hope to see you participating in that as well. Next slide. Just a quick reminder, if you've got questions, put them in the Q&A function. Use chat to communicate with other attendees. And if you're having trouble on the line, let us know. We will be sharing the PowerPoint slides after today's meeting, and I will be asking you and giving you a whole minute at the end to complete the program evaluation. Next slide. So one of the things that we did as part of this employer-directed project on GLP-1s was conduct an employer survey. And we kind of waited until we got close to this webinar. So the information that we got was very recent. And I'm only going to be sharing 3 or 4 or 5 slides with you today. But the full survey results are included in the employer action brief that we are launching today as well. And I'll show you where those links are after our panel. But let's look at the first slide. We had 92 employer respondents. Not surprisingly, about 25% were manufacturing and packaging companies. Here's what surprised me. The majority of those that responded were large, 21%, 27%. And then, well, that doesn't surprise me, the mid-size, because we have a lot of mid-size employers as well. So these are probably organizations that have been on this journey for some time. Let's get to the next slide. So this was the kind of meat and potatoes of the survey. We asked you if you covered GLP-1s for diabetes and or diabetes and obesity. We also said if you don't cover them, let us know. Or if you don't know and not one employer don't cover, that's incorrect English. Not one employer is not covering one of these 2 options, and every single employer knew the answer to this. So you can see 56% of these employers are covering it for both diabetes and obesity. That may be a reflection of the population size of those employers, the employee population size, and 44% for diabetes only. Next slide. What were the top, the key topics that they found were most beneficial? And there's a lot of information like this in the survey, but 91% said that it was important that sustainability, that there would be long-term outcomes needed to be part of the story. Not surprising, prices in there. We always expect that to be an issue, but we're trying to work with the stakeholders out there, as I know the employers are, to fix that or make it better. Price transparency is absolutely key in this environment. So rebates do not work. There's a whole section in the action brief about losing your rebates if you want to carve out GLP-1s and things like that, and we address some of it. Member cost share flexibility is very important. We do have a slide on how much you think employers should be paying out of pocket. That's not the same as the cost of the drug, but you think they should be paying. And then access to the medications to encourage members not to use compounds. Through this project, we learn a lot about the serious nature of the non-FDA approved compounds and the impacts that it's having long-term on some people. And then we're working on getting the other to you. This just launched. We started working on the slide deck on Monday. So nothing very compelling, but we wanted to start with this. Next slide. And the last 2 were actually the last 2 questions of the survey if you participated in it. We wanted to know, what do you guys think about educating your employees and members on the direct-to-consumer models for obesity outside the pharmacy and medical plan? And we always recognize that you may not be able to track them, their, the clinical effectiveness, their journey, outcomes, et cetera. but both of the major pharmaceutical companies and some of the point solution vendors are offering these types of programs as part of a DTC initiative. So I'm going to ask the employers about this in just a little bit. You'll see 63% would consider, 15% said yeah, and then 15% said no. So next slide. Here is one on, what about direct to employer options from the pharmaceutical manufacturers and the vendors? And just a little less said, yeah, we would consider it. And 22% said, yes, we are interested in direct to employer options. And there's very few employers in the country that are doing this, and they're doing it under the radar, but they're doing it successfully. So we would like to push to see that happen as well. Next slide. And with that said, I am so excited about these 4 amazing people who took time out of their busy schedules, because we are all busy today, to share their thoughts about not only this project, but where they're at in this space and where they see the future going. And I'm going to ask them to start by introducing themselves and just share, 3-4 minutes on 5, even if you need it, on what your strategy is, what you're covering or not covering, and what kind of vendors are you working with to make this happen. And then we have some other questions. And Nina, because you start with an A, I have no choice but to start with you, and you look lovely in that picture.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Nina Offert. I do have a disclosure to make. So I started a new job at a new company a couple of weeks ago. So I'll be speaking from my experience in benefit strategy in this space, leaning mostly on my prior experience at prior companies with self-insured employers, distributed and manufacturing workforces. So just wanted to make that clear here. And I think as we talk about the approach to GLP-1s, from my experience, the anti-obesity medication coverage, so the AOMs, were always included. So as we saw GLP-1s coming to market, they were included without us making a decision necessarily, but we did make a decision to keep coverage for them. And we kind of played the watch and wait game and see what was happening, what our experience was, what the utilization was. We did have a prior auth to kind of serve as a little bit of a gatekeeper there for the weight loss. The diabetes, GLP-1 medications were also covered, again with the PA, just to be aligned with FDA indication and clinical standards and utilization. But as these became more popular on the weight loss side, we did see that utilization increasing. And so we had a lot of discussions internally and with leadership, and we believed that coverage should be sustained, but we needed to be more proactive and think about how we wanted to cover them, especially as we were all learning more about these drugs in particular. So we moved more toward a structured strategy versus that kind of open PA, using a sole prescriber. And we were already working with VIDA, for whole health, diabetes condition management, cardio, metabolic conditions. So they became really our point solution vendor partner, managing access, but not just managing access. It was also to provide that lifestyle management piece as well as the clinical physician oversight. So it's really like a all-encompassing way to look at providing those. So we felt like as employers, we were doing the right thing by our associates and members on the plan, giving them access, but giving them responsible access. It wasn't an open gate. The people who needed the medication could participate in the programs and get the medication, and have the accompanying pieces to help really sustain that weight loss and do it in a responsible way. And so It wasn't exactly easy necessarily from a benefit administration perspective. We had to coordinate with our pharmacy benefit manager. We had some coordination to do on the back end. But Vito was a really good partner to work with in that process to really enhance the member experience as they were working through it. So I think we believed philosophically that there are people that need these medications, and we were going to keep them included in our plan coverage. And we needed to figure out how to responsibly offer that coverage for the member and be a good financial steward of our plan as well. I think
Excellent, Nina. Thank you so much for all of those little details that really put the whole piece of the pie together. So now next we have Matt Deegan. Matt.
Morning, Cheryl. Hey, everybody. I'm Matt Deegan. I'm with State Farm. My title basically just means that I do benefits strategy across medical and pharmacy. And similar to Nina, our situation was it was a legacy decision to cover weight loss drugs, and we're partnered with CVS as our PBM, and that they those drugs just got added to that, and we worked with them initially to kind of address through prior authorization the utilization of Ozempic, and then then Wegovy and things like that, and um, our biggest concern right away was that off-label utilization and really pushing to try to get tighter PA. But what we came to realize is that was doesn't solve the problem there, because if people are utilizing a drug off-label, they're trying to do it for weight loss, and then we're seeing some of the challenges that arose with that. And so some of the things that we saw and that were concerning to us is that, you say a lot of stops and starts with folks. So people just weren't using it long term to really have the success or what we thought the success was. So it was like, that was one of the many safety concerns that we had with not having our members go to their like general doctors who weren't educated. There's probably been more education since 2023 when when this happened. But um, also, like, and I mean, like, that really gets attributed to like the lack of access that's out there for folks. That lack of access, I believe, is still there. Now, there's more doctors that are trained in obesity medicine, but definitely not enough to serve an entire population. Also, we as a part of this, so we saw all these problems and we're like, well, we need to find something, a vendor. And there's really, like, to be honest, when we looked out there, we didn't find anybody that meshed with us perfectly. And we went with a solution that we knew we could massage and kind of work with and partner with to be able to develop something long term. We went with a partnership with our care navigator, which is Accolade. They're kind of the the physicians. All of their physicians are trained. They have obesity specialists to oversee that, and then Noom is kind of the front door. We knew Noom is very popular. They're aware. A lot of our members who were aware of used Noom in the past, so that was kind of the partnership that we put in place. But we also knew that we wanted to have a program that was mandatory. We didn't feel like allowing people to have just open access through their physicians who aren't providing oversight. I mean, geez, I've looked at their medical claims and I see people that are on like doctors are prescribing drugs. So you have multiple doctors providing multiple drugs to these individuals. And I'm not a pharmacist, I'm not an expert, but I know that there's like opioids and GLP-1s don't mix. And we needed to have somebody that was looking at that from a safety perspective for folks while supporting them with lifestyle change and these other issues. So we've launched that program with Noom and Accolade in November of 24. So we've had good results so far. People are participating, being supported to stay on the medication. That was one of the first things we saw is like, wow, there's a lot of one is the first thing we saw is, wow, there's a lot of people that need support and need help. and a lot of people that are willing to do and participate in program. There's a lot of folks that weren't willing to do it, but we were okay with that. We had knew that that was the expectation. Um, it has been about a year and a few months, 3 months since we launched, and I think we've seen a total of like 155,000 pounds lost. And in honor of the Olympics, I think they said that was like 40 bobsleds or something like that. We did school buses before. I think we're up to like 5 school buses. Um, somebody threw out Zambonis because that was another one there. Zambonis are really heavy, by the way. But but overall, the program has been a success, but it's a work in progress. I think that we have a good partner for us, somebody that listens to us. I have regular meetings with the head of the program at Accolade, and like just having and she has an open ear that I love, that she's willing to understand our challenges, and we get to hear theirs and figuring out how with our partners, so like with CVS and whatnot, how do we solve for things? So, um, a lot of stuff there. Cheryl, I know we're gonna talk more, so I'll be quiet and let somebody else share their experience.
That was great. And I'm glad you shared the pounds lost. It's interesting because the last time we talked, like a week or two ago, you were at 131,000. Today you're at 155,000. It's so exciting. So thank you for sharing that statistic. I am moving to Nicole Martell.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Martell. I'm the Chief Rewards and Wellbeing Officer for Bon Secours Mercy Health. We are a health system primarily located in Ohio, Virginia, South Carolina, and Kentucky. We now have global presence as well. And I have the responsibilities actually for all total rewards, but specifically, we support not only Bon Secours Mercy Health employees, but we have a subsidiary company called Roper St. Francis in Charleston, South Carolina. And so we have two different ways that we're actually treating the GLP world these days. And honestly, we're using our Roper St. Francis workforce to some degree to be a bit of a test pilot for a future strategy for our Bon Secours Mercy Health associates. So today on the Bon Secours Mercy Health side, we only cover for diabetes. We have a homegrown population health strategy that supports actually our diabetics through their disease process. And then attached to that and integrated with them is a remote monitoring program through our well-being platform vendor called Aduro. And that program supports our diabetics. We do offer GLPs. We've got about 1,800, I believe, that are using GLPs today on the Bon Secours Mercy Health Plan. And we've gone through very similar discernment that Lena and Matt have talked about, and Carol will talk about. At the end of the day, we would love to start to offer these. I think that some of the changes recently and the things that we're seeing actually right now in direct to consumer and direct options for us will open up some doors for our workforce so that we can extend this actually to our workforce for weight management. We do have a strategy in place for Bon Secours Mercy Health associates for weight management that will be a helpful assistant to that when we do offer GLPs, and that is Twin Health. Twin Health actually creates a digital twin for yourself and helps our associates actually work through their cardiometabolic challenges, whatever they might be. We've had tremendous success. In fact, actually, we're over budget for participation, but that will yield us dividends actually this year and the following years as we see actually our healthcare costs go down because they put their money where their mouth is relative to performance guarantees. But just a few highlights from that program thus far. We've got about 86% of our total 5,800 associates that have participated. 86% of them have lost weight, on average 16 pounds. So that's an average for the population. That has resulted for our type 2 diabetics in a 2-point reduction in their A1Cs. And so we didn't really think our diabetics would actually want to take part in Twin Health because we were doing well with diabetes, but they participate in both. And so we've now built connections between those two programs, and those vendors, as well as our population health team that's internal, work very closely together. On the Roper St. Francis side, we do cover for both weight loss and diabetes. In order actually to get access to it for weight loss, though, they do need to engage with our bariatric center and our medical weight loss center there, and we have put some controls in place. So in order for people to continue to have access to it, they have to have a 10% weight loss, and that has to be maintained. And so we're seeing some really positive results with that program. We likely will, when we start to actually introduce GLPs to the Bon Secours Mercy Health, we will likely do some very similar strategies around putting some tighter controls in and holding people accountable for not only weight loss, but actually sustained weight loss in order to continue to have access to them. And that's all I have to share today. I'm going to kick it over to Carol. I think she's the last one.
Yep. Hi
Welcome,
there.
Carol. Carol, go ahead and get started with your shirt. And those that can't
Okay.
read it, I always count on Carol to bring a shirt.
Yeah.
It says, "Obesity is not a moral failure." And my favorite first time, yes, exactly, was a vaccine webinar we had. And tell me again what that shirt said.
Vaccines save lives.
Yep. It was at a
Yeah.
time when things were getting pretty dicey in the market, and it was very, very needed. So thank you, Carol. Share your thoughts with us.
Yeah. And so I think many who are active with MBGH know that I have personal lived experience with obesity and have been very successful. But I will be talking about, with my benefits hat on today, about how I think about coverage for GLP-1s. And like Nina, I'm relatively new in my role. I lead global benefits and employee mobility at HP Inc. So computers, printers, polycom stuff, that's all us. I will talk about my past experience because that's where we really develop the strategy, and then a little bit about what we're doing now at HP. So like Nina and Matt, our coverage of GLP-1s was a legacy decision because we covered AOM. So all of a sudden, maybe 3 years ago, we started seeing trend for GLP-1s that were covered under the plan. So then we had to stop and take a look and think about whether we wanted to continue coverage because it was a significant cost at a time when we were looking for opportunities to cut spend, as are we all, right, with the medical and pharmacy trend that we're seeing. But we decided to continue covering GLP-1s for both diabetes and obesity. And specifically because we did some analysis on who was using the therapy and how long they stayed on therapy, whether they were adherent. We cut our data across demographic and socioeconomic groups and found that the populations who were more likely to have diabetes and obesity in their health profile were the populations that were taking the medications. And then as a cross section, our employees who were less well compensated were also more likely to be on therapy. So the idea that we would stop covering and then have these folks go out and get the drugs either through a compounding pharmacy and the associated risks with that coming back to our plan, or would stop taking therapy at all and then would gain the weight back was something that we were very concerned about. So at the time decided to continue covering for both diabetes and obesity. Now in my current role at HP, and we do cover for both diabetes and obesity at HP, we're having to take a look again because we have significant spend on GLP-1s. And, as good stewards of our benefits spend, we need to make sure that we're spending it on the right people and that we're not making unnecessary benefits expenditure. So we are actively looking at measuring both our diabetes patients and our obesity patients to see what their beginning weight was, where they are now, have they been adherent, and time will tell. I know that there have been reports out that suggest that GLP-1s are not a good investment. There are also reports like the recent Aon study that say they are in good investments. So we need to validate that with our own data.
That was really helpful. And I think that conversation came up on one of our employer advisory board calls, that there are some health plans out there stating that there's been no outcomes. But the reality is, what kind of programs were those employees in? Were they the carrier program? Were they the more integrated program like Avita? What role was that patient playing? So that's my 2 cents for a moment. I do have a couple of questions.
If I could add something to that,
yes,
Cheryl, you know, as a patient who was not enrolled in a program, I can talk about how frustrating it was to try to navigate the system. And, you know, even someone who should know how to navigate the system, finding those obesity specialists who could help me with side effects and is what I'm experiencing normal, and, you know, dosing and triaging appropriately, because my PCP was great. And I was so pleased that he was willing to help get me on therapy. But his recommendations were for side effects, I know now, were not the most informed. So, you know, in the absence of a comprehensive care management strategy, those of us living with obesity have to kind of cobble things together with friends and colleagues, and, you know, going online. And I've been lucky, it's all worked out well, but that's not necessarily the best information either.
Hands down, the best information I've gotten had been my colleagues through work,
Yeah.
you know, who understand the challenges. So thank you for sharing that. Nicole, I have a quick question for you, and then I have one other question. What is your reasonable accommodation if your participants don't lose the weight?
If they don't lose the weight, they don't have access actually to the medication, but they continue on with the plan. They would just actually have to pay actually more for the medication then.
Okay, that's a fair assessment. Okay, and so I had made a comment earlier about compounded drugs. And one of our participants said, hey, I'd love more information on that. This is very important. And I don't have anything immediately off the top of my head. I just have stories that I've heard from vendors and pharma and many employers. And Carol, I know you and I talk quite a bit about this. I recommended that this person, I ask this question and then they Google it, because there's lots of articles and things that talk about it. But any comments from any of you that want to share what you've learned about the impact of compounded drugs and the need to be very, very careful, especially if it's not a reputable pharmacy or vendor that you're working with? Carol, why don't you go ahead and start?
Yeah, if I can share, I think there's a little bit in the action brief about suggestions for what to look for. And, you know, ultimately it's up to the patient and his or her doctor. In my own research, because I was coming off of one plan and thought that I might be off, you know, on Cobra for a while or not have coverage. So, you know, direct to consumer, what do? I know that some of the compounding pharmacies, to be able to get around the patent issues, add other things to the compound. So many are adding B12 to help deal with fatigue, because that is a known side effect and something that happens when you're losing weight in general. So before I did that, I went to my PCP and say, hey, can we check my vitamin B levels just to see what would happen if I went on that compound? It turned out that on my B complex vitamin that I was already taking, I was way over the limit on, you know, or the recommended threshold for B12, like twice what it should be anyway. And then think about if I had unknowingly gone in and taken a compound that was adding in B12 when I already had too much B12 in my body, what the implications of that could have been. So, you know, we need to be careful about what you're putting in your body if you consider going down a compounding route. And I'm not recommending it, but I'm also not a physician. Make sure you know what's in there before you put it in your body.
Excellent. Any other comments from this group?
Well, coming from,
Go.
go ahead, Nina.
No, you go.
Okay. Coming from a healthcare system, obviously there's physicians and pharmacists that are involved in actually our plan design each and every day and how we actually execute everything in our health plan. There was a lot of consternation about offering compounds. And so we were finally at a point where we were potentially going down the route of offering something when there was some pullback on compounding capabilities. But the physicians had a lot of concern about it because of the very thing that Carol actually just outlined is you don't know enough if you're not receiving it through a credible source. And so we wanted to supply it from a credible source if we were going to offer compounds to our workforce. So I would tell you, I think we've evolved a lot in our thinking relative to this, but it's certainly still something that needs a lot of education at the provider level to make sure that providers understand this and can actually have the kind of conversation that Carol's PCP had with them.
Excellent. Any other comments from our other employer speakers?
Yeah, I would just say to add to that, it's kind of with the compounds. I think in the simplest form, it's a buyer beware type of situation where the compounds got some traction when there were supply chain issues. And to alleviate that, some restrictions were loosened, which haven't been put back in place. And so when you think about compounding pharmacies, you could have batch differences. So one vial to another could have some differences. If you're the patient, you're getting if you're self-injecting and you're getting a batch every month or like a vial every month, there could be variation in those batches, even though it's the same compounding pharmacy sending you the medication. So it's very much, I think, a buyer beware. And if you think about the FDA approval, the standards that come with that, and the compounding pieces don't have that. And I would say what really kind of drove me to looking into that a little bit more as a benefits professional was a discussion I had with my own nurse practitioner. She always picks my brain on stuff because she knows I work in benefits on the employer side. And she said, I would not inject that into my body because you just don't know. And it made me really think like, I need to know a little bit more about this. So from the research I've done, it's really, the standards just aren't there and you don't know. And there's not really a way to know. So I think that's like it's a hidden risk that we need to all be aware of, especially as we're designing our benefit plans to either include or not include the GLP-1s.
Excellent, Matt. You don't have to say anything, or you can.
The only thing I'd add is and Nina kind of hit on this, but I try to echo it, is that I've heard sales folks say, oh, we have an FDA approved compound. And I'm like, okay, compounding pharmacies are approved to do compounding when there's shortages. That's true. But the FDA has nothing to do with going into that facility and making sure, like Nina said, that drug is safe. Don't fall for that. Like, it actually infuriated me when the salesperson tried to do that. And I was like, but beware. I mean, I think we know as benefit professionals, buyer beware is on every call. Like, you're like, but anyway, Cheryl,
No,
what would you like to talk to?
This particular topic was really important to us. And it's not like the best point solution vendors out there are not doing compounds. There's a reason for that, right? And so I really appreciate you sharing that. And I plan on including some additional information to the action brief, which we had the ability to do. Like, for example, adding the quote, obesity is not a moral failure to the list. But thank you for that additional
Carol,
information. Yes.
Can I add one thing on the compounding issue?
Yeah.
I think many are pursuing that path either because they can't get coverage through their employer or because the sticker price has been so high that they were looking at I mean, just so desperate to get access to these life-changing therapies that they were willing to take the risk. I think the good news is that prices are starting to come down, and there are direct to consumer options through the two primary manufacturers today. So hopefully this will not be as much of an issue in the future. I mean, both for those who don't have coverage and need to seek it elsewhere, and for us as employers as we're considering coverage, because as the price comes down, it gets easier to justify the expense to our leaders.
Well, and I shared a few slides on that, and that's my last question to you guys. Commentary on the direct to employee and direct to employer initiatives taking place out there. So, Matt, I'm going to direct the next question to you. What were some of the key factors that drove your coverage decisions for GLP-1s for obesity? And I think we have to remember clinical evidence matters, cost matters, fiduciary matters, even equity matters. And we tried to address equity and bias in this document. We felt it was really important because, for years we've talked about stigma with obesity, but what for your organizations as you were doing all this research? And I remember you standing at one of our events on the side door and talking to me about, who you were looking at for GLP-1s. And it was 2-3 years ago. So we've been on this journey for a while, and I think we're in a better place, but we still have to go. But I would love to hear from all of you what your journeys are. So I'm going to start with you, Matt.
So, I mean, I talked a little bit about the importance of like safety and having a program that was part of it. That's part of the FDA label, is making sure that a person's participating in a program with this. We know that it's lifestyle change has to be a part of it. But like that to us would had to be a core component of what we're doing. And then just something as simple as like evaluating somebody with labs. Like lab data is important to protect the safety of that individual. Like the doctor doesn't know if you have a thyroid issue because maybe you didn't tell them that, there's all those things. And plus, are you truly eligible should you be on this medication, right? Like a doctor needs that data, and we wanted to make sure um, that those components were there to support a member uh, through their journey. And like that's how like ultimately our program didn't have all of those things meshed together, and it was a process to build that with them and making sure that there's integrations, because it wasn't like, does the doctor really talk to the dietitian or that member facing person working on lifestyle? Does that really happen, or is it data that gets shared? How do you make it real? That was the problem I had, is like when you think about an individual that's going through this, it's dealing with obesity, is like we're like, how do we make it a program that takes away the stigma that the world has provided to 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 these individuals and makes it real so that they actually want to go to that doctor and be like, these are the struggles I'm having, and not get judged, and that they're truly going, hey, let's look at this and see what you're doing on the front end. Like, what is that participation? Because they need to know that. And so, Cheryl, for us, it was really important that we kind of build that in, and then also understand like how we're supporting people's journey through this, because not everybody can tolerate a GLP-1. There's a lot of challenges with it. And like, do we have other options that are available? I mean, we talked not too long ago about alternatives to GLP-1s, so other AOMs, and like, but we have a virtual program. We do not have on-site clinics. We don't have a way to really support people in that fashion. So everything we do is virtual. And it was really important for me. It was a learning experience to be like, wait, what can be prescribed? What can't be prescribed? How do we support the population, and what are they doing with things? And now next up, I think I saw a question pop in around the pipeline. Well, we just saw the oral tablet for Wegovy come through. And well, from what I'm hearing, it's not as effective. And it comes with worse some the GI side effects are just a little bit worse. And so it's like working with our partners to be like, hey, how do we address this? Making sure that it's integrated into our program. So like when I say integrated in our program, like we are partnered with CVS and saying these doctors at Accolade are the only ones that can prescribe to our population. And So nobody else can prescribe those weight loss GLP-1s, including that. And really, like we leave it up to the doctor. So it's access. It's been like, hey, doctor, this is your patient. Can you treat them? How can you treat them? But also really understanding what that means for
Mhm.
us. And to be honest, like we've dug into a lot, but equity and who is accessing and looking at some of the demographics, we have a little bit of barrier within our data warehouse. We're not overlapping with our HR data, so we haven't really been able to look into the equity component of things. But at the same rate, like the biggest challenge that I think that folks have is, I mean, outside of stigma, because I think there's nothing more challenging than questioning yourself, and people doing that is being able to afford things. So we did increase our I mean we I'm gonna be honest, straightforward, all GLP-1 $67 million in 2025. We've definitely made an investment to support our population dealing with diabetes and obesity. But lost my train of thought. Love when that happens. Little baby, I'm gonna call it baby brain, Cheryl, if that's okay.
He's got a new baby. Well,
I
he and his wife have a new baby and a toddler, so I totally get that. Totally
yes,
get that.
yes. Um,
So
but
let
the
me just
cost,
answer that.
sorry, let me finish with this. I hit it back. Is the cost component is we had to raise. I mean, because of that cost, we have to find ways. So we had to increase our copays for brand name drugs, and it's really driven by this. But we're trying to encourage people, make them aware of coupons and other options that are available to them to be able to support the affordability
Mhm.
of the drugs, regardless. I mean, I'd love to be able to say that the program and how it is and how it's virtual and giving people access to those doctors is meaningful, but without being able to measure that, I'll just say that with high hopes rather
Well,
than
and I
affirmatively.
hope that the GLP, I don't know if they provide GLP-1 coupons, and maybe one of you can answer that, but I know that on one of our last meetings, one of you shared that a very common drug is no longer offering coupons because I think the response was they've reached the capacity that they wanted. And that's really going to have an impact on employers, but more importantly, patients. So that's another webinar. So our next person to answer that question, and if you need me to repeat it, Nicole, let me know. Nicole.
Yeah, can you repeat what the question was?
Sure. What were the key factors that drove your decision to cover or not cover GLP-1s for obesity? And I, gave the examples of whether it was evidence, cost, fiduciary, equity, those types of things.
Yeah, cost and just clinical efficacy. Our clinical leaders from a BSMH perspective weren't super comfortable yet with the fact that there wasn't a long tail on the evidence piece. And we're gathering more and more every year. And so that's why I do think actually we have an opportunity in this next season of planning that we may be reconsidering our coverage. But we will always put a behavioral component attached to it because the behavior piece is so important. There is a lot of rebound with these medications and when people go off, and so making sure that their weight loss is sustainable is going to be the most important part of these medications if they go off of them. And then I would tell you cost obviously is a reason we haven't added to the BSMH plan. But we are testing that because we have taken over the Roper St. Francis administration of their health plans and have seen actually the goodness coming out of that. But in part, they also have overspent. And so we're having to ratchet and put a little bit more control into their plan. So just making sure that we're measuring and being very thoughtful about the design attached to it has been really important to us. From an equity standpoint, I would tell you for right now that that is not a concern for us, but as we make it more broadly available to Bon Secours Mercy Health, which is much larger actually than our population in Roper St. Francis, that will be something we'll keep an eye on because that's really important to us as well.
Excellent. Very helpful. Thank you. Carol.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit to what the others have said. Because the coverage was already there, it was more of a decision to not take it away, and it is more difficult to take something away when it's already in place. But leading back to what I said when we started, we did look at equity, and it was something that was really important to me from a public health perspective, that those who were more likely to have diabetes and obesity, or potentially less likely to be able to afford something direct to consumer, would have access to this coverage through the health plan. Because if they went out and did something outside of the plan, we would still bear the repercussions of the hospitalizations and et cetera, et cetera. So that has been, the equity piece has been very much a part of coverage decisions in the past, but we will have to continue to balance that with affordability. And as the clinical data continues to evolve and emerge, we'll take that into consideration as well. But doubling down on what Nicole said, and coming out of that Aon study I mentioned earlier, they mentioned how important adherence is, and that the best results are for those who remain on therapy and are consistent with it, which I think is often true, right, with anything that you take. But reinforcing the need for a comprehensive program that surrounds the patient so that they're able to stay on therapy and deal with any financial issues or any side effects that are impacting their ability to stay on therapy.
Excellent. Thank you, Carol. Nina, need me to repeat the question, or are we good?
I'm good. Thank you. I would say that we looked at it from a couple of different lenses, as you've heard others. The clinical evidence, I think, is a big one. I think these medications have a place. I don't think that everybody needs them, but I think they have a place. I also think that it can't be a siloed approach of medication first or medication only. So you've got to have that comprehensive wraparound support, the nutrition support, the physician and clinician led lab work, and all the things that everyone else has already mentioned. And it's got to be easy to access so that they can participate in the program that wraps around this whole thing. And I think when it's done right, that we really get to see the long-term effects of that. So you have the initial cost outlay on the medication itself, and then you see the longer term effects in the health of your population. So this is a long game. This is a long game strategy. This is not a short interim solution or an innovation adoption where you will see a cost spike if you're not already offering these, but you have to look at that through the lens of the clinical evidence and the long game. This is your long game. I think from an equity standpoint, we looked at it from equity, and we picked a provider that was a virtual program that had all the things I'd mentioned with the nutrition support, the lifestyle management, the physician and clinician-led team support. It was easy to access through a virtual program. So for employers that are operating in multiple states and multiple locations, this becomes your easy to access platform, I think, from a virtual standpoint. And then you're ensuring that everyone has access to the same program, because that's standard across whether you're in Indiana or California. And then I think from a fiduciary responsibility / cost utilization, you can offer these and still be responsible financial stewards. Again, it's the long game. So you've got to think population health versus that short-term spike in your spend. That can be hard to translate to finance teams. I'm totally aware of that, but it's the conversation I think that is needed if you're not offering and thinking about offering. But there are ways to offer and still manage that utilization, and that's working with some of these point solution vendor programs. One might be better than another for your population, your associates, your members, whatever you might refer to them as. But I think employers have to evaluate it also from a sustainability standpoint. And I do think working with the right programs or building the right programs that work for your team, it has to work for your associates. I think is a key, and you can't be afraid to switch it out if it doesn't work. So you've got some contracting work to do there, and then I also think your pharmacy benefit manager plays a pretty pivotal role in what you can do and how you can do it, with any rebate impacts. So having a tight partnership with your pharmacy program is really key, and how they're accounting for this financially.
Excellent. This is also helpful. We do have a number of questions that have come in, and just so that we can stay on task and get to everything, I would appreciate if you limit your answers to a minute, and if we have time at the end, we can expand on that. Our first question appears to be for all of you, 1 minute each. For the employers who have a set amount of weight a person must lose to continue on the program, what sort of reevaluation is offered to the member before discontinuing their access to a GLP-1? And it's stated because some people may not respond to these medications. They may lose weight initially, but the body fights back and will naturally try to reset to a higher previous weight. So what support is there for these employers? And Nina, I'm going to start with you.
So I think that goes back to the wraparound comprehensive program that you have. You've got to, when you get on these GLP-1s, you've got to titrate up. So you've got to start at the lowest dosage and see like what's effective, how that works. And then when you get off, you've got to titrate down. So it's like a stair step up, plateau, stair step down. And when you have like a comprehensive program that you're working with, it manages all those pieces. So whether you decide you don't want to do it anymore or whatever that reason might be, it goes back to that lifestyle management and understanding how every piece of it fits together. And I think those comprehensive programs, whatever vendor partner you might choose to do it, really is that key piece of helping people on board and off board of what that looks like.
Thank you. Matt, how about you?
Can you repeat the question for me?
Sure. So there was talk about someone who has a set amount of weight a person has to lose to continue in the program. Not everybody loses weight the same way. And so what support are you providing to those that are taken off a GLP-1 because they weren't able to lose that weight?
The program and the physicians are always available to an individual regardless of whether or not the medication is working for them. So there's alternative medications that the physicians can prescribe. There's the new program. We can, if they're eligible, I mean, we could share and support them with bariatric surgery, which we cover at 100% for our members. So it isn't, and that is a doctor-patient decision. So, I mean, obviously, like a doctor is going to have a conversation with somebody if they've been on a GLP-1 for a few months and they're not seeing any type of results. But like ultimately, how they approach the care is going to be in partnership. We don't have a hard stop. I know that there's some, like with CVS, I know their prior auth looks at a person after 6 months, and if they haven't lost like 5%, then they're supposed to no longer be eligible for the medication. We don't do that. We don't use like CVS's prior auth and things like that. So we like to leave it up to the member and the physician. But ultimately, it's like, how are you supporting somebody through that challenge? Because that's got to be terrible. If you're like looking for this solution, it's working for so many others, but some.
Is anybody doing, Carol or Nicole, are you doing anything differently? I think all of you are probably offering some kind of an AOM. Anything different, Nicole?
I would just say because the population is in Charleston specifically, and it's all baked around our medical weight loss clinic. There's lots of discussion and contemplation about alternative options for people that it's not working for. So finding actually the thing that works best for the individual is really the important part of this. And so if one GLP isn't working, maybe it's a different GLP, but maybe it also actually is considering some of the surgical interventions or working with a registered dietitian. So that's why that clinic model is actually being tested right now, is wrapping around that person actually in a really holistic way is how we've actually embraced it.
Excellent. This is kind of the opposite end of things. What kind of strategies do you offer for employees who have actually reached their goal and need continued support from the medications and or other means? And let's try and make this quick so we can keep going. I'm going to start with you, Nicole.
Can you repeat the question a little bit? I'm not sure I was following what the question was.
So just as we talked about somebody that didn't meet their weight loss goals, now you have an employee that did meet their weight loss goals. And what are you recommending? Are you going to keep them on therapy? Or do you have other ideas of things that they can do, either other medications or things they can do?
Yeah, I mean, certainly therapy will continue to be available to them. But in addition to that, one of the things that we've done recently is we've pulled all of our vendors that touch our workforce into a room. They literally all were physically in a room. We talked about referral patterns and making sure that they're referring them, like when they graduate out of a program, there is another place for them to go to get additional support after they graduate out of a program. And that has proven to be really, that was an amazing, it was amazing dialogue. It created actually a tighter knit community of all of the resources that we had for people. So making sure that people know, your vendors know how to point to another vendor in your ecosystem so that they continue to be supported. And we'll see actually if that's worked, because that was in November and so far so good. We actually are getting a lot of great traction from that.
I love that you guys are doing that. Keep us in the loop. How about you, Carol?
Yep. We continue to cover the therapy after people get to goal weight when they're taking it for obesity. I know there's a lot of discussion about de-prescribing, and we do have something in the action brief about that as well. I think that it's just important that that be a conversation between the doctor and the patient about whether that's the appropriate path to take. I personally haven't seen data that demonstrates that you can successfully de-prescribe. And as a patient, yes, it would be great if I didn't have to inject myself every week at some point, but I am committed for now that I will be on this medication for a very long time. I mean, just like people are on statins for a very long time, other therapies when you're dealing with a chronic condition.
Thank you. Nina.
Yeah, I would say that offering just a whole health program is a pivotal key piece to your benefit strategy, not just in GLP-1 access and support, but in your population health strategy. We leave that decision on whether a GLP-1 is right for this person and the length of time that it is. Like Matt said, that's a physician-patient decision and discussion. We provide the wraparound support through the programs that we have in place. And I think one of the most interesting things that I've seen as we've worked with programs, this is not a Vita commercial, I promise. But one of my biggest surprises was that we had so many people just interested in whole health and access to registered dietitians. So you think about that as an early intervention point in the journey of somebody's health. If you can provide access before they start a chronic condition or have one that's developed or currently in that management, if you can provide access proactively and intervene at like such an early intervention point, you think about what that, down the road cost becomes that you save, and then of course the health and well-being of that person as well. But I think it's all about the support that you provide from that program management and then even like the layer around it.
Love it. How about you, Matt?
Oh, have to laugh at Jason.
Yeah,
uh, in the chat. So we do support, our program does support deprescribing. We've had it occur within the first year. And really, I mean, that you know, pointed out, patient doctor decision. Do you have the comfort? Does the patient have the comfortability to do that? How do you support that ongoing? And they always have access. We don't charge for our program. Our members have no charge except for the high deductible folks have to, you know, you have, wait, sorry, we do not have that. They the big beautiful bill made it possible to waive that. So forgot about that. It's only been a few months. Give me some grace there, Cheryl. Uh, but yeah, like that's always available. So and with the Noom portion of the program, we that's open to anybody that wants access because we have their traditional program that is facing to the general public that the folks can use, and then they have like an advanced enhanced obesity support program that ties into our what they call the new med program that we support their accolades. So um, and if a member comes back and is having challenges if they get deprescribed, and we haven't had this occur yet, we've had some people be deprescribed, but not haven't seen anybody come back. But we're closely tracking that on our end to see, like, trying to understand, hey, who does this work for? Who does it not? Or like, are there patients that yes, absolutely should be on this for life? So it's a learning experience, and we're trying to learn and digging into our data partner at Springbok, you know, working with them on that.
Thank you. Thank you. So I have a question, I have two questions for Nina and two questions for Matt, but they're the same question. And I'm going to challenge you to do it quickly, but I think it's an important question. Nina and Matt, how did your employees who were receiving a GLP-1 react to having to use a vendor to obtain it when you launched your solution? It's a good question. Nina?
And thanks, Cheryl.
Quickly, because we,
Yeah.
you know, have other questions to get to.
Yeah. So we started off with Vita as a voluntary piece. So we had people accessing it just organically through Vita. We had people doing their own prescriber. So when we moved to Vita as the sole prescriber, we did have some rub. We did because people like going to their doctor and maybe their doctor was prescribing something that they shouldn't really have. So we did have some rub, but I think Vita did a fantastic job of working through all of that. Their customer service was fantastic. We had minimal elevated or escalated issues that came up through that. So we did see and experience some, but in the overall grand scheme of things, I think it was very minimal. And then we had felt the security of knowing maybe we had people on it who shouldn't have been on it. Now they are not on it, but they still have access to all that whole health coaching and the dietitians and everything else that they could use except for the GLP-1 access if it wasn't clinically appropriate as deemed by the physicians.
Matt, how about you?
We grandfathered 4,000 people that were already on a GLP-1 for weight loss, so they got to continue as long as they continued taking the medication. If basically I look at it, if they have a 60-day break or a 90-day break, if they're on a mail order supply, um, then they may lose that. But it's basically into perpetuity. But they do have access to the program if they want it, and if they want to leave, we're still not going to take that away. So
I think the lesson here learned, and Carol and Nicole would say the same thing, that you have to think beyond the initial and make sure that you've got all of the pieces in place so people don't fall through the cracks and they know they're supported. And we're not even talking about communication today. Again, that's another webinar, but that is going to be key to making sure they know that. The second question was, your vendor stratify the employees' obesity severity and only provide those with higher severity the medications?
So it's a doctor's patient decision, really. On that, we're not going to prescribe a drug that shouldn't go. The doctors won't prescribe. I'm not prescribing anything. Or being prescriptive about what is prescribed.
You want to say that again? I'm kidding. Don't do that.
But are you
How about
doing
you,
it
Nina?
according to label? Are you
Yes.
basically allowing coverage according to the label?
Well, it's going to be the doctor's decision. If the doctor can look at the history of an individual and what they've been going through and things and being like, hey, XYZ might be a better option. Let's go here. Like it, that is going to be the doctor going to be making that, the doctor and the patient making that decision. But we're never going to prescribe off label. We're not putting a limitation on somebody that's like, hey, I have a 35 BMI. Well, yeah, you're eligible. So like, and yeah, and like it can make sense, right? But it's a question of what do you, that might be a challenge for your PBM and their relationship with the drug manufacturers and rebates. That's probably the question that comes into play there. But if, like Nina said, if you're that's an initial, you're rolling out the program and you you want to minimize the cost challenges. You heard my cost challenges. I've had trends of 25 plus for 2 years, and it's driven by GLP-1s and some sneaky specialty drugs. But um, that's the question that you're gonna, you gotta say for yourself is like, hey, are rebates worth it, or is it worth, hey, let's focus on people that a BMI over 40 or 35 and see where it goes from there.
Nina, real quick.
Yeah, I would say it does go back to that doctor patient, that clinical management. And the program that we chose was very individualized. So it wasn't a flat, if your BMI is X, you are eligible. It goes back to that individual piece and that doctor understanding everything that's happening. So it's an individualized program in a lot of ways based on the need, the actual need that person has. And I'll also say our program, Vita, it's not a Vita commercial, I promise. Jason, hi. Um, but they're not GLP-1 first. They look at the whole wide range of things and try a lot of interventions before it hits to that GLP. But again, it's very individualized. Maybe they intake a person who has like 5 things that really say GLP-1s are your first line based on these things. So I think you can go like a black and white approach, or you can go a more individual approach. We saw success with that more individual approach.
And I'll just add that I won't say the V word, although they're part of our purchasing arm. But the fact that you keep citing an organization like that means that they are someone that is really helping you navigate. And that's what all employers should be looking for. Navigate the design, navigate the guardrails. All of those pieces are critical. This is for everybody. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds each. It's an important question. But I have other important questions. How have any of the programs you have put in place for obesity impacted your overall pharmaceutical rebates or pharmacy rebates? And we have a whole section on this in the employer action brief. But I'm going to start with Carol.
We haven't carved out fulfillment from our PBM yet. And the rebate question is something that has prompted us not to do it yet, although we're actively considering it. Is there a way to get access to the medication more cost effectively that would justify the potential loss of rebates under the PBM contract?
Excellent. I think we actually have sample contract language also in the toolkit, because we're talking about, we're seeing a huge shift in the PBM space, and we as employers, it's our money, we have to use our voice. So look at that, Matt.
Actually, if I can add one thing to that, in my prior life, we had moved away from one of the big 3 PBMs to a pass-through, more transparent PBM, and had specifically inserted language saying that we could use that they weren't the sole PBM, that we could carve out certain classes. And I think that contract language is a really important component to a contract that would allow you to then work with another vendor and not impact rebates.
I just wrote that down as a potential quote. I won't attribute it to you. Don't worry about it. How about you, Matt?
We have not seen any impact in our program any impact to our rebates with this program.
So you have flexibility.
Yes. We have definitely, prior to this, negotiated the ability to basically carve out any portion. Now, and not surprising, with all of that, they tried to input cost barriers to restrict us from moving, and then we've done some other things to kind of negotiate those things out because, yeah, there's always negotiation. So if you're putting in a program, I think a lot of these players will try to charge you to do so because they're going to lose money,
Right.
right? So, but that's not on your bottom line. Doing an RFP and like thinking what Carol is doing, making sure you have the right language
Right.
is
Absolutely.
imperative.
Yeah. Yeah. Nicole?
We have not seen it. I would tell you that we're bracing for it because there is a lot of movement and rebates these days. So I think we anticipate at some point it is going to impact us. We are with a somewhat of a, we're not with one of the big three, but we're also not with one of the full transparent PBMs. It's kind of a hybrid. But I think it's a real possibility. And so making sure you have that language in your contracts is going to be really important.
Thank you. We did have a comma about people that may not have a weight reduction or reduction in their A1C on a GLP-1 based on a genetic profile. We are aware that many plans have prior authorizations and that there is a growth in the complete pharmacogenomic test before the script is filled. And, I think that if the price of that test, it's going to be less than the cost of treatment. But then how are you going to support that patient? But I see both sides, and I just wanted to share that thought. We have a few other questions, but I am going to wait to have those answered in a minute because it's part of one of the group questions. So I'm going to move on to affordability and management. And again, just if you wouldn't mind, since we only have about 10 minutes left, how are you balancing affordability and access? Are you doing anything unique? Now, the survey includes utilization management strategies. So I'm going to ask you guys about benefit design, things that you might be doing to manage that access and affordability. And I'm going to start with you, Nicole.
Do you mean access specifically to GLPs or
Yeah.
access?
I would say even access to GLPs and obesity, because everybody on our survey, are covering it for diabetes, and most employers today are that are of a certain size. So access and affordability from a benefit plan design strategy related to GLP-1s for obesity.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite frankly why we're not covering it for our obese population at this point in time. GLP, I think it's $26 actually when you fill it as a person with diabetes. So I think $26 per month times 12, it's actually a very affordable solution right now for our workforce. But if we were to open it up, I'm not sure we could keep that affordability low for the people that truly need it right now from a diabetes perspective at that low price. So that's where we're really struggling with that. And I think that's where as it becomes more affordable, that's when we'll reevaluate whether we're covering it on our plan.
Thank you. Carol?
Yeah, we continue to think about affordability and access, and keeping it affordable for those who take the meds, but keeping the plan affordable for everybody because of the pharmacy trend. So I wouldn't say that we're doing anything unique in terms of pricing for patients, but the cost is a continued pressure for us, and we have to look every year at whether we can continue to cover.
Okay, Nina.
Yeah, I just agree with Carol and Nicole on that. I think the other pieces, the programs that we've mentioned, the lifestyle management, just the access into the program itself, outside of the cost of the medication, the programs are at no additional cost to our associates or members on the medical plan. So we try to remove that as a cost barrier, an access barrier, and then always constantly reevaluating what those pharmacy costs might be.
Yeah, and can I build on to what Nina just said
Sure.
too? Is those programs also, the V word, but also Twin Health and several others, and I think Noom as well. At the end of the day, if they have strong GL or performance guarantees, and they're going to return that back into your plan from a cost perspective, you are being a good fiduciary of your plan. And so make sure you have really super strong performance guarantees with those vendors.
Well, and I need more from you guys on what that looks like, because I think that needs to, those stories, a few of you mentioned it, but those stories need to be added to the employer action brief, because most employers are not even thinking about that piece of it. So I may be reaching out to you to talk a little more about that. Matt, you're the last one answering this question.
The only thing I could add, because I agree with everybody, it's a question it's been a question for us this year. Where ongoing question is going, can we afford to continue to cover this at the rate that we're seeing the increases occur? And because I mean it's rare. People are like, because there isn't a drug like this. There isn't a drug out there that's available, eligible for 60%, 70% of your population or whatever that's eligible for it at this cost. And so that is a real challenge. And so all things are on the table, like the direct to pharma, any other solutions that come up, we're always there. But the challenge is like, are they ready for us? Are they ready for, like, they're still being baked, and you're like, and so you don't want to dig in too quickly. But the reality is a 25% trend is just not, it's not sustainable for us and our health plan. And like ultimately we've had to make a decision, is like, hey, do we need to reevaluate all of our health plans and how we do coverage? And should we have a plan that just doesn't cover GLP-1s? And then they have a different plan that you would have to have access to. So it's been required a lot of creativity on our part, but will be more to come. And this will be an ongoing conversation for folks, because I'm 60 people on a call talk about GLP-1s. If you told me that a year from now, I'd have been like, no, people would be done with this conversation.
118. Well, maybe it's not. Maybe it's only 55. 118 signed up, but they just want the resources, and I get that. I do that too. This, I'm just in the interest of time. We did ask questions in the survey. Would you consider a direct to employer option from either pharmaceutical manufacturers or vendors? And we actually talked a lot about the Trump RX model. And we're not going to go into a lot of detail, but they are offering that as well. And I am seeing both of the major companies, pharmaceutical manufacturer companies, recognizing the cost and trying to come up with some solutions. So we greatly appreciate that. We also are seeing more, or we want to see more direct to employer options. So direct to consumer member options, direct to employer options. And as I've said before, there's only a handful of employers in this country who are doing that, certainly not under the table, not unethically, but they've got all of these vendors that want their rebates. They want that profitability. And that's why they ding employers who try and carve GLP-1s out of the plan, just like they do any drug. So I think this area is going to continue to grow. But the downside is that if you're not able to track outcomes, you don't know if that patient is getting the best practices by a clinician. Just give me 30 seconds on your thoughts related to that, or a minute each, as we kind of close the book on this webinar, and I make some closing comments. Nicole? You're on mute, hon. Oh, I called you hon. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
That's my age. Oh my gosh. You're like a daughter to me.
So Cheryl, I guess I'm having a hard time tracking actually what the question is. So what is the true question?
So the direct to employer options, where you're gonna work directly with a pharmaceutical manufacturer or vendor. And the pharma programs out there that we're seeing include a clinician element to it.
Yeah.
And then educating, I wasn't clear enough on this and I apologize, educating employees or plan members on their ability to have access to direct to consumer programs outside the pharmacy or the medical benefit, where you're not going to get a chance to really see what their success is or what that program looks like. But those programs do exist. And one of them that we recently talked about was Trump RX. And pharma has those programs as well.
Yeah, we're weighing both direct to consumer and direct through the manufacturer, but direct through the manufacturer would still be run through our plan, and we would subsidize to some degree. We're contemplating one or both. It'll come down to dollars and cents and whether or not we can cover it with something else that we may be actually stripping out or changing about our plan, because it's always about gives and takes within a plan designed to get to your dollars at the end of the year. So I don't know that I know my answer right now. I will just tell you both are on the table right now for us.
That's fair. Nina?
All right, I'm furiously writing notes here. I think that employees have a good deal of trust in their employers. So when we think about how this works, we've got to be able to, number one, communicate it well, and we have to be able to execute it well, whatever the decision is. And so I don't think that the infrastructure is quite there yet. So I'd say I'm open to whatever might work that fits my benefits philosophy, my benefits strategy, however I can make that work within my plan design. If it supports our associates, if it supports our strategy, our philosophy, and we can make it work, I would say, like Nicole, it's all on the table. I don't think there's any one model that's quite ready yet when it comes to that, though. So I'm probably more in a wait and see, but monitor heavily kind of approach.
That's fair. Matt?
So it kind of has me thinking about like the new laws that have been passed in regards to transparency around rebates and these other things, and like, is that really gonna like? And I'm skeptical that that's really gonna happen because it's not supposed to happen until like 2028 or after a new contract on 2028. But like, I think that it's that push for, hey, what are we actually paying? What's my rebate, and not this game that we play today, and that allows us to like truly go, well, what's our option to get the lowest net cost? Or is what Trump RX is offering just a shell game, the shell game without, with two card Monty instead of the third, like, so to me, that really is gonna open up the opportunity for us to be like true stewards of being like, how do we get people to the lowest net cost? And then is there going to be somebody that's going to fit in the game for us that's going to be able to support us to have a benefit? Because I don't want to have a benefit that's outside of my plan design. I'm spending 60 some $million. I can't just take that away and not have a pre-tax benefit for that. So but anyway, Nick, we have a minute left, and I'll let Carol talk about this.
Well, I needed 5 minutes left, but I'm totally fine if I have 30 seconds. Totally fine. Carol.
I'll be real quick. I think we have a fiduciary obligation to look at all of the options. When there are extra intermediaries, we are potentially not getting the lowest net cost going through the PBMs today. So if we need to look at direct to consumer, direct to employer options, I think we should. That said, there's a potential impact on patient experience, because if they're not able to fulfill the medication the same way that they're used to, there's extra friction in the system. And again, to reiterate what everyone has said, we need to best support the patient through programs, education, just support. So it's all on the table.
Yep. And one person said, will you do the same with cell and gene therapy treatments? That's another whole 5-day conference. But we had a few questions or comments about, are you going to expand your program and cover for other disease states? What's in the pipeline? There's actually a question in the survey that answers this. We list the top 11 things that are in the pipeline, and we ask you, will you cover it? Is it like yes, maybe, no, don't know? And it was interesting, but in the end, it all comes down to clinical efficacy. So with that said, if I can't thank you guys enough, you are rock stars. This was outstanding. I always think we have enough time and then we don't, but I want to thank you again for being on the project and all the employers. There were, I think, another 6 employers that were on this project. This is the employer action brief that we are launching today. GLP ones and beyond, the same title, navigating cost coverage and clinical value. The left is an example of just some of the things that are included in there. It's a little longer than we expected, but it is so robust. And I'll point out that it includes employer coverage models, what kind of vendor partnership models there are. We talked about prescribing and discontinuation, equity and anti-bias, sample contract language, presenting to leadership. We didn't talk about that. There's some pearls in there. A communication and outreach strategy, and of course, employer action steps. Next slide. And we love your feedback. We need your feedback. We pay attention to your feedback. We want to know what we can do better, do again. So please take the time to fill that out. We will send the slides out with probably another copy of the survey link, but you have to promise that if you don't do it now, you'll do that then. It's in the chat function. And then my last slide is just a quick reminder about the March program coming up on March 11th, and that don't forget to sign up for your Run One free pass as an MBGH employer member of the annual conference. Again, panel, your insights are always spot on. Any of you have comments about today or want to share your own story, just email me. And I want everybody to have a great rest of the week, one day tomorrow, and then the weekend. And thank you so much. Bye.